Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan AGAJANIan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. With us today is actress Victoria Foyt and artist Scot Heywood. Victoria Foyt was born in Florida, graduated from the University of Miami, and spent time studying in Spain and France.
Yes.
Were you acting at the time, or were you interested in acting?
Well, yeah, I was always interested in acting, but you know, when I grew up, I don't think I heard the word actor as a sort of profession until I reached the age of college.
What were you going to do then?
I wasn't sure, really. I was studying foreign language and business, and it just wasn't available. I grew up in South Florida in Coral Gables, and I never met an actor, so it just wasn't something that was an option. It wasn't until a few years later I moved to New York and decided that that's what I wanted to do. I was enrolled at the neighborhood playhouse and sort of had my epiphany there and went on.
Were you writing at all? Did you think about being a writer?
Yeah, I was always writing, but at that point it was really more journal writing and
it was nothing
like
that you thought you would publish or do anything with?
Not really, no, not then, no.
It's pretty strange, because being from this area, being from California, it's a part of our life. And to think that you would be living in Florida and not have that kind of contact, and then to become so successful in film.
Well, I mean, it's not like I didn't watch every film that came across my plate. I mean, I was sort of movie obsessed.
Oh, you were?
Oh,
so
yeah.
You did.
Oh yeah, I was movie obsessed, and I was singing, actually. I always took singing lessons, and I mean, it wasn't a completely culturally dead end. There was a lot of stimulus. It just wasn't directed towards acting.
I just wondered if there were movies being made in Florida, if you were ever on the sets.
No. There was no such thing.
So you didn't have that motivation?
No, no. No, in fact, my original interest wasn't specifically towards making the kind of movies that Henry and I made. I always thought I'd end up being in musicals. That was what I thought would be, the best thing and the most ultimate experience.
You just mentioned the man, the filmmaker, Henry Jaglom, whom you met somewhere along the way in New York or California. How did that happen?
I met him here. I was in a play in Burbank called Awake and Sing, Clifford Odets play. And I sent out these boilerplate postcards to directors. I didn't know Henry. I'd never seen a Henry Jaglom movie. I don't think his movies had ever played in Florida.
How did you get him on the list?
I just, like every actor, you have these lists you buy at Samuel French. And
you just had list after list?
It was just a list. It was like a struggling actor. Oh, I gotta get a job here. And he called me on the phone, and we talked for like 5 hours on the phone, and the next thing I knew, I was coming to see a rough cut of Eating, and then the next thing I knew, I was pregnant and we were getting married.
Oh, come on, so there was some time in between there.
Very little.
Very little. Henry Jaglom is such a great filmmaker. I think he puts art into his films. I've said this before, and I've seen so many of his things, and he's a person who discovers new people. Obviously, he discovered you, and you've been in how many of his films?
3. Yeah, the thing that attracted me to Henry was that he had this sort of non-compromising standard of art, and he had which really is so wonderful, a way of including, some people say that he does it to an excessive point, but including his personal experiences and really taking from life in every way that life hit him, bits and pieces, and making a collage of it with his work, and that really appealed to me.
But when you say taking bits and pieces, he didn't have the structure that I think, what I've read, you are very structured. You like to work in a structured situation, especially if you've been in plays and you've done theater.
Yeah, you know, when we got together and we started, you know, it was obvious to us that we wanted to work together. And
And you met. You talked on the phone.
Yeah, we talked on the phone.
And you talked on the phone.
And then my daughter was born, and then we did Baby Fever. That's really how it went. Anyway, but it was very obvious to us. And he, you know, I think he did New Year's Day, he's told me, by writing the story on the back of a cardboard sheet. You know, the cardboard that comes in a new sheet that they folded around. He'd written basically the story of the movie on the back of that. And that just was my idea of a nightmare, to go into a situation like that, because I came from a very methodical approach, and he did too. I mean, he was originally a method actor.
Which film are we talking about that he wrote on the back?
New Year's Day. With
New Year's Day.
David Duchovny, and yeah.
And that's the also discovered Duchovny,
David Duchovny, right? Yeah, exactly.
And Francis Fisher and Martha
Maggie
Plimpton,
Jacobson,
Maggie Jacobson. So we could get Victoria Foyt.
Yeah.
We could go on.
He's got a great eye for talent. And he's really very supportive, and he's given a lot of people opportunities. And you know, and I've been lucky because he's given me opportunities as an actor and a writer. When we did Baby Fever, I came up with the idea, and he said, write it. And I'd already written a couple scripts, but never really, you know, had anything done. And I said, well, okay, I'll write it, and then what? And he said, well, then we'll make it. So I wrote it, and then he said, well, I can't use this. I don't use a script. And it's sort of been a successive process of putting more and more structure into his films.
So you've both brought different things to it. He's brought you a view of opening things out, and you've brought him a view of some more structure. Yeah. We have a clip from Baby Fever. Do you know what it is, or are we going to just play it?
I think it's the one with me and Eric Roberts.
Okay. Let's see it, and then we'll talk more.
It made me realize that I want a child more than anything in the world. When I thought about the reasons I wanted a child, I only thought about you. It's not like wanting a motorcycle, wanting a horse. It's wanting a life.
You're unbelievable, you know that?
I've been told.
I haven't seen you in so long. You didn't return any of my calls.
I was selfish, and I was childish, and I was wrong. And you know, what you see is what you get. What's here right now is no different from who was living with you when we lived together, except in the fact that I know what you are now.
So now you appreciate me.
Oh, yeah.
Now you want to have a baby, now.
I don't have to do it right now.
I hate you.
No, you don't.
I hate you.
So tell us what you were doing with Eric in this clip.
Well, Eric plays my old boyfriend. He comes back into my life and suddenly wants a baby. And the whole premise of Baby Fever was the female angst over, you know, is it time to have a baby, and who are you going to do it with, and is
the clock?
The clock. Are you going to balance it all? I mean, you know, it's just all about balance. I mean, women just have a balanced thing to deal with. And Deja Vu has a similar communal chord in that it's, you know, is this the right soulmate? Is this the person that you really want to spend your life with? And then suddenly somebody comes into your life and you're inexplicably drawn to this person. You feel overwhelmed. And do you pursue that, or do you stick with this relationship that you've set up and that seems somehow safe? And
But the funny thing is, with Deja Vu, which you wrote and starred in, and Henry Jaglom wrote with you and directed, you both came into this project with those same kind of feelings, the Deja Vu feelings.
Yeah, we came at it from a different angle, though, because Henry, you know, sort of, well, I mean, my take on it is a little bit more literal. I really love this synchronicity of life, and the way that, you know, if you really open yourself up to certain events and flow with them, to me there's almost a mystical approach to it. And with Henry, I think he looked at it as more of the MGM feeling of love, you know, the ideal, perfect situation. But it was a really interesting movie to make, because while we were making it, it was just amazing to me that everybody who came in contact with the project had some interesting take on, say, the White Cliffs of Dover, which was a song that was repeated throughout the movie, or the very theme of it, or they were going through some similar episode in their life where they just met somebody and they were trying to figure out what to do. And it has a resonance that people respond to, because I think, I mean, you know, you've probably experienced, you're in a bookstore, you see somebody across the store, hey, wow, I'm feeling this great thing, and
or I've known you
what do I
before,
do?
or I've seen you before, or what are you doing? That's what happened to you in the film. With somebody that you felt like you'd seen before, or you'd known before.
Yeah, and you can't explain that because you know you don't know each other, but what
so
does
it has
that mean?
this really mystical quality to it, and yet it's set very today. Jerusalem, Paris.
London, yeah. I mean, it's a Henry Jaglom movie, so it's not going to be, you know, in the Tibetan mountains. It's not going to be, you know.
I know, but it's a lot of locations, I think.
Yeah, it's very different from his other
done.
movies. Completely different. It's much more narrative. It's much bigger in scope, and there's a real follow-through with the storyline.
How did you decide on the casting? Why didn't Henry play this role?
Well, I think he didn't want to play it because he felt that that would kind of pigeonhole it as the kind of movie he'd made in the past, and he wanted to do something very different. And this story really requires that you believe that these two people could meet each other and have those feelings. And not that if Henry and I played it, you couldn't believe that, but it just needed, we needed somebody who, you know, was more of a romantic lead. And Stephen is just really brilliant.
We don't have a clip of Stephen, but we have a clip of you in this situation in Jerusalem where you talk to a woman.
Aviva Marx, yeah.
Aviva Marx, who's an Israeli actress.
Right.
So let's play that clip and
Okay.
then we'll talk some more about it.
Okay.
Excuse me? Excuse me? Would you mind if I join you?
Of course not.
Thank you. So much beauty. It's really too beautiful here to sit alone.
It's true, it's gorgeous.
You're a tourist?
Well, not exactly. I'm here on business. But it's my first time here.
I come every year nearly.
Really?
Yes. I don't stay in Jerusalem. It's too much for me.
Why?
But it is too holy to sleep here. I sleep in Tel Aviv. I stay in a nice little hotel on Hayakon Street by the ocean. The Ketedan, maybe you heard of it? I sleep well there, and I come to Jerusalem. It's so close. You're American, huh?
Yes, I am.
Engaged, I see.
Yes, I suppose I am.
Oh, I see. You don't sound so thrilled, huh?
No, it's just that it's become a condition of my life, a fact of my life, I guess, because I've had this ring for 6 years. I've been engaged for 6 years. But my boyfriend is very happy because I finally set a date, so we're getting married soon.
Yes. But you are not happy about it.
I'm very happy about it, actually. He's a wonderful guy. He's great. I wish you were here. I love your pen.
She gives you a pin and sets you out on a journey. Now you're going to London to meet your fiancé?
Yeah. And she gives me this pin. She disappears. She describes how important it is to her that it has this incredibly rich romantic resonance in her life, and she just disappears. So I set on a journey which I haven't planned to take, sort of a byway, on my way to meet my fiancé. And on the way to meet him, I meet this other man who I fall desperately in love with. And then I end up in London as planned to meet my fiancé. And I'm torn, but I just figure, well, that's it, that was just some kind of insane episode of my life, and it doesn't have anything to do with real life. And then through circumstances, he comes back into my life. And what's interesting in the movie is a lot of times you have the romantic situation where, the couples are drawn to each other, but the real life situation is sort of set apart. And here everyone is pushed together, sort of thrown together. And
he comes into it.
Yeah.
Everybody comes into the picture.
Yeah, and there's a lot of tension created there, and it's really interesting. Michael Brandon and I, who are the only Americans in the cast, play my fiancé. And he's so quintessentially American and such a, you know, great guy.
Can't understand what's going on.
Yeah, and you really don't know who to root for. You don't know whether my character should stay with him. I mean, it's predictable, but it's not boring. He's a wonderful guy.
And he's not mean.
No,
or he's
our life is
understanding.
set. There's nothing really wrong. And then there's this charming guy that I'm terribly drawn to. Should I go off with him? And if I do, what does that mean? Then you know, he could be gone tomorrow, and I've blown this wonderful relationship that I've developed and that I have serious attachment to, and it's a problem, you know. And I know my character is not the only one who's encountered this, because the response has been, well, you know, oh God, I know what you're talking about. That kind of thing.
You have to do it. I mean, because it's the choices that you make in life. Now, are you going to be doing something else? Are you writing? Are you just taking care of the kids? How do you do things in between?
You know, I don't know how I do everything. I just do what I can, and I've been just writing a lot since we finished Deja Vu, and written a couple scripts, and hopefully we'll get those into production soon.
Will it just be a Victoria Foyt, Henry Jaglom film company now, so that the two of you he'll direct, you'll act, or?
No. Actually, the things I've been writing are not the kind of things that he's interested in directing. They're much more. They're not as personally emotional in scope.
Do you find that the doors are open wider or not open as much because of this type of filmmaking that you're in?
You know,
is it independent film?
Yeah, it is independent. It's just very independent, and I don't know, because I haven't really been knocking on those doors, to tell you the truth. I've been so busy, but so I don't know.
You don't know?
No, I don't.
It'll be a new Victoria Foyt. Yeah. We'll get to see it.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
And we'll look for Deja Vu, we'll look for Baby. All those are on video, right?
Yeah, Last Summer in the Hamptons and Baby Fever are both on video. And eventually Deja Vu will be, but you should go and see it in the theater first.
Exactly, because I think all these films play better in the theater.
Yeah, I think it's opening in New York April 24th, and in LA.
Thank you. Thank you. Don't go away, because painter Scot Heywood will be back with us. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with Scot Heywood. Scot, who's a painter, has been in major exhibitions across America. He's been represented by important galleries like Chalkmule, Ace, Kiyo Higashi, and New Space. But to his great credit, he's self-taught.
Oh, that's right.
What schools did you attend?
Joan, I very briefly went to UCLA, but I was completely disillusioned with that it was the late 60s, 69. The Vietnam thing was beginning to happen.
To art school?
Right.
Did you go to art school?
No, I went to UCLA and took life drawing classes, and
you did?
Very briefly, but it bored the hell out of me, and I had other things that were taking place that made me move on, and I had sort of a tragic kind of life when I was a young kid. I lost my father when I was 10, and a mother came down with multiple sclerosis. So it was the 60s. It was a very volatile time. It was an exciting time. I began to explore jazz. I was a musician when I was young, and I still am. And the 40s American painting, Pollock, de Kooning, all of that started to come into my consciousness.
How could that come into your consciousness, though? It seems like it's like so totally away from what you were doing.
Well, I was, it was a very volatile time, and it was experimental time, and it was a very intense time, and I was looking for anything. I was writing poetry, I was playing music, and fortunately a professor friend of mine that was 10, 12 years older was a mentor, and sort of guided me through that, and presented all of these things to me, and
so he knew you were interested in the arts, which of course you were interested in.
Right. He saw me drawing, he saw me playing music. He was an accomplished musician. So all of these things, and you always need somebody like that that's going to guide you when you're young at that time. And he opened up a lot of things for me, and as a matter of fact, gave me my first canvas when I was I was 18 years old, and left town and says, do you feel like, you know, working on this, because he saw me drawing. I painted on this thing for 48 hours straight, drinking wine, and did not stop, and it was an absolute revelation. I was 18 at the time, and I haven't stopped since.
So that's how you became a painter. Someone gave you a canvas.
That's right.
How'd you learn to mix your paints, what to do?
Well, that just came out of hard work. That just came out of just work and dialogue with other artists.
Where was this?
This was in Los Angeles and Northern California. He has a farm up in Sonoma County, so I was going back and forth.
You had met other artists, so you were able to at least know what they were doing at the time.
Well, what happened is I worked for 5 to 6, 7 years by myself without even any consideration whatsoever as far as gallery situations or showing work. I was really, you know, coming to it from a very pure place.
But painting for yourself, which is what I think artists have to do.
Right.
Nowadays, they're also worried about getting a gallery and where we
they're businessmen now.
Exactly.
You know, they're coming in, they're pumping them out of art school, and you know they should be walking runways rather than painting. So I come from the very classical tradition of painting. So I painted without ever considering, you know, what it meant as far as, you know, having it manifest into the world.
But what was it like?
Wonderful.
I mean, the paintings were what? Were they figurative?
Abstract expressionism.
They were still abstract.
Expressionism, cubism. I was working stylistically through every possible thing that I could to teach myself. And it came from very, very hard work.
Were you reading?
And it came from, yes, of course. I was reading. I was exploring. Now, a big time is when I came back to Los Angeles, because my mother got even sicker and I had to come back down here from the Bay Area, and I started meeting a lot of the people that we know, such as John Miller and Ed Moses and James Hayward, and all of these guys were, you know, friends.
Pure artists.
Right.
Artists for artist's sake, the people you've mentioned.
Exactly. And I arrived at a pure form of abstraction when I, first of all, the big moment was when I became exposed to Mondrian and Malevich and Barnett Newman and Ad Reinhardt and Mark Rothko.
All your mentality.
And I was always an abstract painter from the time I was very young. You know, I was always, you know, really dealing with the frontality of the plane of the painting as an issue, and I never was a figurative painter per se.
So you don't have to go from figurative and work your way up to an abstract painting.
I don't think so.
Is what you're saying?
No, it's pure form. It all has the same elements. Mondrian figured out that you could break painting down into those essential universal components and deal with it on that level. And figure and detail and the three-dimensional world were simply, you know, I mean, it's superfluous. I mean, it was not necessary any longer for me. Other mediums do it better. Photography does it very well. Literature does it very well. Poetry does it very well. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I needed to completely remove myself, you know, literally from the painting and allow it to have its own sense of poetry and have its own. Go ahead.
So describe your work now compared to when you first started.
It's been incremental in its changes. I mean, matter of fact, this is a little study for a large painting that occurred in this is early 80s. This is in early 80s.
And there's three
This was a structure. This is when I first started to apply an external configuration to the painting, which has stayed to this day, and it's been almost 15 years now that I've retained the external structure of this. It's different than this. It's more simplified. It's more evolved.
Do you keep simplifying? Is that the idea?
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily. It's a matter of fact, the paintings that are at Chalk Mall right now are more complex in some ways. The paintings were monochromatic and singular in color for 10 years. And, you know, it was
singular in color.
Monochromatic.
So people will look at something like this, and I'm sure you've come up against it since you've been an abstract painter all your life. My kids can do something like this.
Hear it all the time.
You must hear it all the time.
Hear it all the time.
And what do you say about that?
I even hear it from. I don't address it.
You even hear it from who?
Yeah, right. But I don't address it any longer because I've been doing it too long. So it's simply you walk away, and the abstract painting is either you come to it and address it, and it can transform you, and you take the responsibility to stand in front of it, or you walk away from it, or you walk by.
But how can you teach someone to understand this?
This forum is a possibility. I do it one-on-one in the studio all the time.
Just by talking.
Sure, you know, and I get less and less patience the older I get as far as of dealing with these people, and I tend to spend my time around people that are already familiar with that possibility.
Well, talk about color, because I notice in some of the work the color is really important, even though you talk about monochromatic planes.
Well, color to me is not color anymore, it's light. It's a source of light, and that's sort of been the big difference in the last 5, 6, 7 years, is sort of an understanding that all my colors are always mixed by 3, 4, or 5 colors at one time.
But no one can tell that. No one knows that.
Well, you feel it. You do sense it. You sense that there's something going on there. It's not just red. It's not just black. It's like when I would do a painting like this. This would be, you know, these two blacks here. This is a 3-panel painting. This would be a red-black, a very warm black compared to a blue black or a cooler black. And so I've been studying that color sense for 20 years.
So you really have to have someone who knows, who can come in and look at it and know that if you spend time with this painting, you're going to see a green that has 5 different colors mixed in it, or a gray.
Right.
It's not just gray.
Yeah, and again, it's just there to enhance the plane, the planar aspect of the painting, and the singularity of the experience.
Now, you talk about this language. You have a language of your own, actually, and it's a special language that other artists must have with you.
Yes, absolutely, and very few.
Everybody can't get into that.
No, I know, it's very difficult. So at times you do have to make it understandable. I mean, but I do get less and less patient in that area. And you know, part of the problem is this kind of painting, even though it's a 100-year tradition, it's big. You know, people are still demanding pictorial art, and even the institutions in this city, and we know who we're talking about, are still not really giving the time to the nature of this painting and the indigenous painters that are in this city that you and I both know, Joan.
Well,
I mean, the John McLaughlin retrospective was just down at the Laguna Art Museum. You know, travesty as far as I was concerned. Should have been done by MoCA or LA County.
Should have been done here. And I think we haven't in the city taken the responsibility of supporting our artists the way we should support them.
Absolutely.
And we're going to go. We have to leave, but I'm glad you came on and opened our eyes to what to look for.
Well, thank
and
you,
also to let the institutions know that we need to support our artists more, each one in each city.
Absolutely.
And keep writing to us. Keep writing to us at 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor. And we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.
All right.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Joan.